Boys and girls, our story today is called Counting on Katherine, how Katherine Johnson saved Apollo 13. All right, we are still thinking about what makes mathematicians special. What are the things that they do? Yesterday, we read the story of Ray Montague, and we said that Ray focused, she made a plan, she had grit, she saved the day, and she studied. Let's see what we can add to that list today. Just like yesterday, I'm going to ask you to add verbs that you hear on Padlet. So I want you to be listening to the actions in our story, the things that Katherine Johnson does. Counting on Katherine by Helene Becker. Katherine loved to count. She counted the steps to the road, the steps to the church, the number of dishes and spoons she washed in the bright white sink. Did you hear that? Mathematicians count. That's a word we heard on Monday too, isn't it? When we read about that boy who loved math. The only things she didn't count were the stars in the sky. Only a fool, she thought, would try that. Even so, the stars sparked her imagination. What was out there? Katherine yearned to know as much as she could about numbers, about the universe, about everything. If you yearn for something, that means you really, really want it. So she really, really wanted to know more about the universe. Katherine's boundless curiosity turned her into a star student. She was so bright she skipped 3 whole grades. She catapulted right past her brother. He wasn't too happy about that. Can you imagine skipping 3 grades? Like if you went from 2nd grade all the way up to 6th grade? That would be crazy, wouldn't it? By the time she turned 7, Katherine was ready for high school. 10. She was ready for high school. But back then, America was legally segregated by race. Her town's high school didn't admit Black students of any age. This reminds me of the story of Ray Montague, right? So Ray and Katherine share the same hardship. They're both not allowed to go to school because they're Black. Katherine burned with fury. She wanted more than anything to keep learning. There was still so much to know. Count on me, Katherine's father told her. By working night and day, he earned enough money to move the family to a town with a Black high school. How lucky was she that she had a father who valued her education and cared that much. Katherine loved high school. She was good at every subject, but math was still her favorite. She dreamed of becoming a research mathematician, making discoveries about the number patterns that are all the foundations of our universe. Mathematicians dream. That's important, isn't it? To have big dreams that you want to accomplish. In those days, though, there were no jobs as research mathematicians for women. Professions most available to them were teaching and nursing. So Katherine became an elementary school teacher. She liked her job and she loved her students, but she never stopped dreaming about exploring numbers. Again, this is a lot like Ray, isn't it? Even if you were white, if you were a woman at this point in time, it would be very hard for you to get a job in math or science. In the 1950s, the U.S. government's National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics hired thousands of new employees. It even started hiring Black women as mathematicians. Katherine heard about the mathematician jobs. Her heart raced with excitement. Perhaps her dream could come true after all. But when she applied for one of the positions, she was told they were already filled. Katherine had to wait a whole year until new spots opened up. Her patience paid off. She got the job. A few years later, the Soviet Union sent a rocket ship into space, launching a space race with the United States. NACA was rolled into a new space agency, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and you've probably heard of this. Their acronym they use is NASA. Katherine now found herself at the heart of America's space program. She worked as a computer. Electronic computers weren't widely used yet, calculating long series of numbers. So her job was just doing math problems, like a human calculator. All the computers were women. They were given the tasks that men thought were boring and unimportant. That didn't bother Katherine. She knew that without her contributions, a spaceship couldn't reach its destination nor safely return to Earth. So Katherine knew she was important. Here's why. Sending a rocket ship into space is like throwing a ball into the air. At first, the force of its energy runs out. At first, the force of the throw sends it up, up, up. But as its energy runs out, the ball's path curves back down toward the ground. Where it lands depends on what angle it was thrown and how high and how fast it flew. Because math is a kind of language, Katherine could ask those questions. How high would the rocket ship go and how fast would it travel? Using numbers. And numbers would provide the all-important answer. Where would it land? Mathematicians ask questions, right? That's important. If you're going to find an answer, you have to know what the question is. To find out, Katherine plotted the numbers she calculated on a graph. There's one we hadn't heard yet. Mathematicians plot. That means they put dots that represent numbers on graphs to keep up with information. When she joined the points together, they formed a curved line. At one end of that line was Earth at the time the rocket ship launched. At the other was where Earth would be when the ship landed. This is important, isn't it? You want the ship to land back on Earth. Katherine's reputation for accuracy and strong leadership skills. She was known for asking plenty of questions. It got her promoted to Project Mercury, a new program designed to send the first American astronauts into space. Mercury's missions were going to be dangerous, so dangerous that even the project's star astronaut, John Glenn, refused to fly unless Katherine okayed the numbers. "You can count on me," she said. Glenn's spacecraft, Friendship 7, orbited Earth 3 times. That means it went around Earth 3 times and returned home safely. Glenn became a national hero. He wouldn't have done it without Katherine, right? Katherine was promoted again. Now she was asked to calculate the flight paths for Project Apollo, the first flights to the moon. "Count on me," she said. On July 20th, 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts walked on the moon. Their feat was celebrated around the world. Do you think people thought to celebrate Katherine and her math? Apollo 13 launched on April 11, 1970. But on the third day of Apollo 13's flight, the worst thing happened: an explosion in space. Could the crippled spaceship make it to the moon? And if it didn't, would it be able to get back home to Earth? The 3 astronauts on board were in grave peril. If somebody's in grave peril, that means they could die. Commander John Lovell told Mission Control, "Houston, we have a problem." Back on Earth, Katherine Johnson got a phone call. Her flight path calculations would have to be done all over again, and perfectly. It would be the toughest challenge of her life. Katherine told Mission Control, "You can count on me." She rolled up her sleeves, took a deep breath, and began doing the math. She worked hard and fast. A few hours later, Katherine's calculations were finished. The flight path to return home would take the ship around the far side of the moon. From there, the moon's gravity would act like a slingshot to zing the ship back to Earth. To get home, the crew of Apollo 13 would have to follow Katherine's course exactly by burning off fuel at precise intervals. That means spaced throughout time. If the astronauts made a mistake, their ship would drift through space forever. Katherine waited anxiously to hear the astronauts' report. Finally, it crackled over the loudspeakers. "We've got it!" And Apollo 13 was back on track. Katherine Johnson had done it. She'd brought Apollo 13 home. She was no longer the kid who dreamed of what lay beyond the stars. She was now a star herself. So, thinking about Ray Montague and Katherine Johnson, one thing that stands out to me is that both of those women had to overcome a lot of struggles. And I think that's true of a lot of mathematicians and a lot of people in general, right? We all have things that try to hold us back, and we've got to find a way to get past them. It's just like we were saying when we read, "Oh, the places you'll go." We've all got mountains to climb, right? I hope you were listening for some of those verbs. If you need to rewind the video, you can. I want you to go over to Padlet, and you can take a picture of yourself holding up a word you wrote down. You could type the word. You could do a drawing of your word. I can't wait to see what you came up with. See you tomorrow.